Okay, tomorrow we're going to be
Objective,
going over
we're going
Model
to be
1 Lesson
comparing
6.
decimal fractions to the thousands using like units and express comparisons with less than, greater than, or equal to. The first one here says use greater than, less than, or equal to compare the following. And A shows 16 and 45 hundredths, and we're comparing 16 and 454 thousandths. Now, the biggest misconception for most students is that this number has more digits, so it has to be the larger number. When you're working with decimals, that does not always apply, and it is definitely not true. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to use a place value chart. I'm going to take A and I'm going to put it in the place value chart to 16 45 hundredths, and then we're going to put the 16 and 454 thousandths. Now, when we're comparing these, we always start on the left-hand side, and we compare the two digits in the tens where they're the same. The two digits in the ones, they're the same. Two digits in the tenths, they're the same. Two digits in the hundredths, they're the same. Now, here, I don't have any digit, but what you always do is put in a placeholder so that they are exactly the same. You can compare them. Now we can see that the 4 is larger than 0, so this number here is the larger number. So we would have to say then that 16 and 45 hundredths is less than 16 and 454 thousandths. Now the next one was done for you, but I also want to show you how to use a place value chart in order to get it correct. The first C says, and it's showing you how they wrote it, was 205 thousandths. And we know that we're going to come over, we're going to put the 5 and the thousandths, and then we have to fill in the digits. Because we just can't put 205 in one column. We're only going to have one digit. So the 0 had to go to the next one, and the 2 had to go to the tenths position. Now we're comparing it to this number, which we can see that when we write it in, they are exactly the same. So they were equal. On the next one, we're looking at two different word forms. Okay. First one says 5 ones and 8 tenths, and tells us there's a decimal point there. 5 ones, so we're going to put 5 in the 1 spot, 8 tenths. Now the second one says 58 tenths. Well, if I came over the tenths and I put 58 in here, I can't put two digits in here. So the 8 has to go in the tenths, and the 5 has to go in the one before. So you can see that 58 tenths is another way of saying 5 and 8 tenths. So they would be equal. On to J. J shows 703 and 5 thousandths. So we're going to go ahead and place that in our place value chart. And these are simple questions, but most students miss them because they don't like using place value charts. And the word forms is 703. 703. And, so there's our decimal, 5 hundredths. So I'm looking for the hundredths place, and I'll put 5 hundredths in there. Now I have to put a placeholder in here. Now, a lot of students get confused at this point because they still think that the top one is larger because it has more digits. So the best practice is to go ahead and put a placeholder in there so that they have the exact same number of digits. Now we can see that 703 and 50 hundredths is larger than 703 and 5 thousandths. So up here we would say that 703 and 5 thousandths is less than 703 and 5 hundredths. Now here is a problem that gets students in a lot of problems sometimes because you have to read it very carefully. And it says arrange the numbers in increasing order. Increasing means that they would start at the smallest number and increase to the next larger number. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to write, excuse me, wrong one. I'm going to place each one in my place value charts. Because this will allow me to compare them. Now once I've written them all in, I'm actually going to fill in placeholders so they all have the same amount of digits. Now I'm looking for the smallest number. So if I look in the ones place, they're all the same. I look in the tens place, they're all the same. When we come to the hundreds place, I can see the lowest one is 808 thousandths. So that would be my lowest number, 8008. And I know that in there is my first one. I'm going to go ahead and line it out now since I have that one taken care of. Now I'm looking here. Now I have 2 8s and a 9. So I know that one of these two right here is my next number. So I can't tell from the hundreds position because they both have 8s in them. So I'm going to move to the thousand position. And I can see that the top one has a 0 and the bottom one has a 1. So we know that 8 and 80 thousandths would be smaller than 8 and 81 thousandths. So we're going to write that one in next. 8 and 80 thousandths. I'll put a comma here so we can tell the difference. So that one's taken care of. Now our third one, we've already determined that the top one is lower than the one below it. So we're going to go 8 and 081 thousandths, leaving our last one of 8 and 90 thousandths. Now the number 3a was done for us, but this one here is telling us to do it in a decreasing. That means we're going to start with the largest and go to the smallest number. So with the same place value, I'm going to go ahead and put the numbers in. 8 and 508 thousandths. 8 and 508 thousandths. Oh, excuse me. That should have been 58. And I'm going to put a 0 on this one here. That was 58. Then we have 7 and 5/10 and 7 and 58 hundredths. Now, once again, I've already put a 0 on this one, but I'm going to make all of them have the same amount of digits. Now I can look here, but it says decreasing, so I'm looking for my largest numbers this time. So I know one of these two numbers right here are going to be my largest numbers because they're 8s, which is larger than 7s. So now I need to go down to the next digit. 5s are the same here. I go down to the next place value and I see 8. So I know the largest one is going to be 8 and 58. Next largest would also be the one underneath of 8 and 508. So now we have the two 7s to deal with. So we look at the 7s. Once again, the 1s are exactly the same, 7 and 7. Come to the next one, and we see the 5. So we know that is our next largest number. And that leaves us our final number of 7 and 058 thousandths. Question 4. James measured his hand. It was 17 hundredths of a meter. Jennifer measured her hand. It was 165 thousandths of a meter. Whose hand is bigger? How do you know? Well, once again, I'm going to go ahead and place both numbers write in a place value so that I can compare them. Now, first indication says, well, this one here, the biggest misconception, students say, well, it has more digits, it must be the bigger hand. Well, we're going to fill in the digits to make sure they're all the same. Now, if you read it, this is 170 thousandths. This is 165 thousandths. This is the larger hand. So, we know that James's hand was bigger because 170 thousandths is larger than 165 thousandths. Now, do you notice how I used unit form here in my explanation? It makes it a lot easier sometimes to write them down, and it's a lot easier to compare sometimes also. All right, well, good night. Hope this helped you. We'll see you tomorrow for lesson 6.